What Dave Filoni just did is pure genius because he took what was chaotic about the original trilogy, the old trilogy, and connected it with the new, with the Ahsoka series and everything that happens in between the lines. Behind the scenes is a whole different world. By the way, did you know that Dave Filoni considers Anakin Skywalker the greatest Jedi of all time?
This young teenage girl who was trained to be a keeper of the peace had to become a warrior, worthy of standing next to the greatest Jedi of all time.
I'm sure you guys have something to say about that, so let me know down below in the comments. But this is what I'm talking about. We have to do something different for this video because I have to celebrate what it actually means, how Dave Filoni is handling everything. Throughout this video, I'm gonna drop tidbits, details about the old trilogy, how chaotic it really was, details that you've never known before, and how Dave Filoni is doing right now with how he handled the entire series. We're gonna talk later about Marek as well, but did you know that the Leku of Ahsoka have been somewhat changed for the Ahsoka series? You see, in The Mandalorian, they were pretty stiff. That was the biggest complaint, that they look very much like a prosthetic. Whereas in this new series, you can clearly see when she's talking to Sabine that the Leku are much more flexible and look real. The transition from the animation version is pretty on point here. In comparison to this, here's a crazy story from the original trilogy. This scene when Han and Leia first meet Lando, according to Carrie Fisher, Han and Leia might be still drunk. No, really. During the shooting of Empire Strikes Back, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher were partying a lot, and they were partying with the Rolling Stones, who were recording just down the block from where they were shooting. In an interview, Carrie Fisher went on to say one day they had a really early call next morning, but they were partying with the Rolling Stones, so both of them decided to pull an all-nighter, party with the Rolling Stones, and go for the early call. After partying all night, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher arrived the next morning without any sleep. So what was the first scene of the day? That's right, the Cloud City meeting between them and Lando. This was the first time they encountered Billy D. Williams, and as you can clearly see, Han and Leia are just a bit off. I bet Lando told them where the coffee machine was immediately after meeting them and getting a whiff of their breath. A lot of us have been talking about Marek and who he actually is. Is he Starkiller? Is he the Luke clone? Is he even Ezra Bridger? Where we can clearly see who he really is without his mask, as he is training with Rosario Dawson on set. This is Paul Darnell unmasked, and he is actually credited in this series. The real question I have is, who is Marek supposed to be? We don't have to look at the face of Paul Darnell. What we actually have to look for, I think what Dave Filoni is hinting at, we have to look at his body type. It is definitely not Ezra in my opinion, but if we're talking Starkiller or the Luke clone, then I think we're getting closer and closer to the answer. Let me know, who do you think it is? Is it just an Inquisitor, or is it more? R2 originally spoke English.
Hello there.
And he was almost sent to anger management classes because, as we all know, he beeps and whistles now and we all love it. But back in the original draft of Star Wars written in 1974, George Lucas wrote R2 speaking in complete sentences. The horror actually came when George went to shoot and he was not that lovable goof. R2 actually came off as kind of a bully, berating 3PO with insults like, "You're a mindless, useless philosopher, and you're nothing more than dim-witted." Tatooine was hot enough. Both of these tin cans might have exploded from the heat. Empire Strikes Back starts shooting, and people were kind of monkeying around. No, literally, because long before Yoda was created with animatronics and puppetry, the plan was to hire an actual actor, a primate actor that is. According to Making Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, they plan to dress up a real monkey in a Yoda costume and a mask. There are actually photos of the monkey in training, and weirdly, a hideous Yoda mask prototype. I mean, this looks downright cursed and disturbing. Luckily, a crew member who previously worked on 2001: A Space Odyssey pointed out to the guys that the apes used in that movie's opening were a huge headache, which was enough to convince George and Irvin Kershner to actually fire the Yoda monkey. Plus, once they saw the bill for all those bananas for the monkey, they needed to keep him happy. Well, suffice to say, Frank Oz got the job. To some, Boba Fett's first appearance is in Empire Strikes Back. Hardcore fans know actually that he had appeared earlier in the Star Wars Holiday Special in 1978. But in fact, both of these accounts are wrong because the history of Boba Fett's appearance goes even back further. The first time ever Boba Fett made an appearance was in September 24th, 1978 during the San Anselmo County Fair Parade in California. Back in the day, nobody needed Comic-Con because they had the local county fair. Only those townspeople were lucky enough to see Boba Fett in advance before anybody else, all because they shared a zip code with 52 Park Way, the original headquarters of Lucasfilm. An assistant film editor went on to say that, "I don't think any press outside of the San Anselmo newspaper covered it in any way." So this was Star Wars for you back in the day. We've sure come a long way since then. David Prowse has been known to Force choke the fun out of many situations. Well, this is one of those times because he might harbor dark side feelings towards Star Wars a bit. When it comes to Darth Vader, we think of James Earl Jones. But inside that suit, there is David Prowse, and Prowse apparently isn't among George Lucas's favorite people. Prowse revealed on his website, and it's since been taken down, that he was banned from all Lucasfilm-associated events, which included conventions and other Star Wars celebrations. David went on to even reach out for an explanation, to which he was told that he had burned too many bridges between Lucasfilm and himself. No other reason was given. George Lucas declined to comment on this, but it was pretty apparent that David Prowse was a little bit too vocal about his displeasure in learning that another actor, Sebastian Shaw, was used when Vader was unmasked. So at this point, you can say that David Prowse's feelings were also unmasked. Now, why did the sound editor cross the road? To get to Kylo Ren's closet, of course, because according to Matthew Wood, sound editor for many of our favorite Star Wars material, when they were shooting The Rise of Skywalker, changes to the script came in so late that he had to travel to the home of Adam Driver, who played, of course, Kylo Ren, and he wanted to record him delivering a few new lines and necessary lines, and this happened in a rather low-tech place. It didn't happen in a studio or at Skywalker Ranch. Matthew Wood went on to say, "I ended up opening one of his closets where he had all of his suits. I just pushed the suits out of the way and said, 'Hang your head in here.'" Matthew Wood revealed on a podcast this is how Adam Driver recorded his lines, by sticking his head inside his own closet. The moral of this story, if you ever feel like your workplace is cramped, just think of Adam Driver's head in a closet and suddenly, well, your desk doesn't seem so bad. They almost shot Chewbacca because they thought he was Bigfoot. So Chewbacca has appeared in Norway for Hoth and many other places, but things went to DEFCON 5 when they went to the Redwood Forest in Northern California. During the filming of Return of the Jedi, this was used as the moon of Endor. But things weren't going so great for the actor Peter Mayhew. In fact, his experience was a bit unbearable. During the several months shoot, he had to constantly be chaperoned by bodyguards in bright vests to protect him from hunters. That's because in costume, Mayhew knew he could have easily been mistaken for a bear. More hilariously, the bodyguards had to protect the actor from people searching the forests for Bigfoot. For many years, people thought this was just a tall tale myth, but Peter Mayhew went on to actually confirm this story on Reddit. Why didn't the Jedi use their lightsabers to shave? Well, because they had a better solution: their communicators. This is not a joke. In The Phantom Menace, they really did use women's razors as communicators. We have seen some elaborate props and gadgets in Star Wars, but my favorite prop trickery must come from The Phantom Menace. Next time you watch The Phantom Menace, look closely at the communicators used by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. If you do, you might notice that these are shaped exactly like a Gillette razor. Well, that's because they actually are. This is no joke. They were created from the resin cast of a Gillette Ladies Sensor XL razor. This is in fact how Ewan McGregor went on to be so smooth-faced in The Phantom Menace. No hair at all, baby. If you have ever wondered why there are no Jawa sandcrawlers in Libya, that's because they almost caused an intergalactic incident. I actually discovered the culprit is this guy who parked the sandcrawler in the wrong place. To hardcore fans, you know that Tatooine was actually filmed in Tunisia. George Lucas found the perfect place to create his desolate world of Tatooine. However, Tunisia shares a border with Libya, and at the time, it was ruled by the dictator Muammar Gaddafi. It has been reported in '77 back then that Tunisian government received threats from Muammar Gaddafi himself, warning that a conflict was inevitable if they don't remove a military vehicle from the Libyan border. Now imagine everybody's surprise when they learned that this military vehicle in question was actually a Jawa sandcrawler. They had apparently parked the sandcrawler close to the border. The Libyan government and Muammar Gaddafi thought that this was an advanced military weapon ready to strike. In the end, George Lucas agreed to move the prop in order to avoid an international incident and to avoid his movie getting called Desert Wars in the future. Now, Darth Maul never blinked when playing a poker game against Obi-Wan. This is because he had already lost half his bet. Get it? If you watch The Phantom Menace again, fans argue about the blinks of Darth Maul. How many times did he actually blink during his scenes? His villainous stare in that movie is part of his character. However, this was kind of by accident, because reportedly the red contact lenses worn by Ray Park made it so difficult and painful to blink, and because of this menacing glare that came off while shooting, it was actually decided to be used as a character choice. You'd think a guy who doesn't blink would be great at a staring contest against the Jedi, and then the trolling master comes around. Every kid back in the day watched watching Empire Strikes Back wondered,
what does Boba Fett look like under that mask?
Well, not to blow your minds, but his real face is in the movie. This was a pretty good Jedi mind trick that they did on us back in the day because he is right there in clear sight without his mask and nobody realized it. I mean, all of us can be forgiven for not noticing because, as Jeremy Bullock, who played Boba Fett back in the day, explained in a 2000 interview, one day I was sitting around in the Boba Fett outfit and I was asked if I would mind playing this Imperial officer because there was nobody to play the part. The role in question, Lieutenant Shackle, a character that didn't even have a name back then. His face can be seen right here in Cloud City where Princess Leia says, "Look, it's a trap," and this Imperial dragging her away is Boba Fett's face in Empire Strikes Back. What's crazy is that moments later, you see him as Boba Fett again shooting at Luke Skywalker. It's pretty crazy what they got away with back in the day, and nobody even talked about it. Oh, and by the way, Yoda's original name was Buffy. You're welcome.